Well, no. Since I'm wearing my Irish hat, I've got to use my leprechaun voice once in a while. But yesterday, I decided to pull the timing cover off so that I could verify that my dots were lining up, and they're lining up just about perfectly. So I got to figure out what my timing problem is. But what I need to do next is to reinstall the timing cover, and to do that I've got to drop down the oil pan, which I don't want to take the engine off to do that. So I'm not going to take it off all the way, but I'm going to loosen the bolts to drop it down to get enough clearance to put the oil pan back on, because it's got this seal that goes in the bottom here. All right, and to put it in properly, I've got to lower the oil pan down enough to get that in, and then tighten it back up. So that's what I'm doing, is just loosen the bolts on the oil pan so it drops down about a 1/4 inch, enough to slide this in. And what pissed me off, I saw this thing sitting here, and they put orange paint over chrome. Don't they know? It's a well-known fact. Chrome adds horsepower. Raw aluminum adds torque. So you don't paint over chrome or aluminum. You know, how much horsepower do I get back when I remove all this paint? I mean, come on, man. What were they thinking? Putting paint on chrome. It just made me sad. Okay, I've put my horsepower making chrome cover back on there. Now, I've tightened the oil pan back up, and now I've got to put my harmonic balancer on. I have a specialty tool kit for that. And here's the harmonic balancer. I've cleaned it off a little bit so I could read the numbers as it spins by. And every 90 degrees it has a mark showing where the next cylinder will fire, in theory anyways. So I'll clean that up just a little bit, just for now, so I can get it in my budget. Now, with this tool, it's a multi-pieces. This bolt goes through here. This adapter, because it's a 7/16 adapter, is the one that fits the small block Chevys. And of course that gets threaded on here. Let me put this camera down and use both hands. Okay, so I'll take this piece and I put the bolt in here and the adapter in the other end, and I turn this in till it's just hand tight. After I've got it hand tight, then I'll insert it into my crankshaft. Okay, that's all I need to do, is just get the hand tight. I don't want to make it over tight. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I just want to thread this in and get it just hand tight. I don't want to jam it all the way in. Don't want to torque it any, right? So I got it in there hand tight. Now what I'll end up doing is I'll hold this still. Now that's all the way up against the end so it doesn't move, but I'll put the harmonic balancer on here, then the washer, then the big nut goes on there. Then I hold this still while I'm torquing with this. So I need 2 wrenches and some grease. I need to put some grease on here and on the harmonic balancer. I'll just go ahead and use a little bit of my lithium grease that I use for my axles, just because I've got it and it's right here handy. So I just want to put just a little bit on there. I don't need to grease it up a lot, just enough to lubricate it so that the harmonic balancer will slide on. And of course, I do the same thing on the harmonic balancer. Just put a little bit of grease in there, just enough to lubricate it. You know, I'm not trying to do it like I did the axles where I want big gobs in there. No, I've got a keyway here and the key there, so I've got to line that up, get it so the keyway is lined up. It's locked in there, the keyway's locked in. Now I take this washer with a bearing, it's got a bearing in it. This side stays up against the harmonic balancer, and this side turns against it with the nut. So I'll put that in there like that. And I'll put the nut on here. Now I'm going to need 2 tools to do this. One to hold this still so I don't over torque it and strip out my threads in the crankshaft, and then one to torque this. As I torque this, this will press it in theory. That's the idea. Okay. Like this for this. And I just need a tool to hold this still. Look at you. Oh my gosh. Vice grips are always the right tool. Just makes me wonder, what's Derek Barry doing right now? Is he getting his hands dirty? I don't know, but I'm getting mine dirty. It's actually pretty easy to turn, it just takes time. I almost wish I had a longer wrench here to catch it on this so that it wouldn't have to hold it with both hands. See that this is getting closer in here. But I need to push it all the way in until these numbers line up here. So it's got a little ways further to go. Okay, I've snugged it up as tight as it'll get, and you can feel it when it just comes to a stop. You just can't really push it anymore. So now I'll take this and remove my tool. Of course, put it back in the box. a bolt that goes back in the center of this to lock it down, but I'm going to leave that off for now because I've got to make some adjustments. I've got to be able to crank it over. So I'll put the 3 old ones in that I'm not going to be using as studs, so that I'll be able to crank the engine over to get it to top dead center. This is just an easy way to move the engine without destroying the bolts I'm going to use, because you can damage the threads when you're using a big screwdriver like this to turn the engine over. So I really don't want to do that with the ones I'm going to use. So I'll just tighten these down a little bit. They're 9/16. I think they're 9/16, or they're 5/8. No, they're 9/16. My handy dandy little cheapo tools, just to get these torqued in a little bit, because I don't want to strip my threads in the harmonic balancer either. So I'll get these turned in a little ways. I don't want to turn them in all the way because I need them for studs. I need them to be able to get a hold of the screwdriver. But they're in far enough where I don't think I'm going to tear them out with this when I go to turn it over. So that's the idea. Use that to line everything up and get it top dead center. Of course, what we have to do is pull the spark plug off of the number 1 cylinder, get it on the compression stroke to top dead center, and then move this to 0, lining my 0 up here. So that's my next step. Okay, now I've got to find out whether I'm on the compression stroke and at top dead center. So I've got to turn this around. There's a couple things to look for. I'm going to remove this to make it a little bit easier to see. But right before it gets to the compression stroke, I'll see both of these valves move. First the exhaust will move, then the intake. When the intake moves all the way down, then back up, I should be able to move it to 0 and be at top dead center. So I'm going to spin it over and see where I'm at. With all the plugs in, I do have compression on the other cylinders, and that makes it difficult to turn. This will be much easier. See, this one's the next one up here. So I think I've got to go around one more time here. Exhaust is coming up. The intake should start dropping down here. There goes the intake dropping down. I've got my finger on here to feel if I'm on a compression stroke. Oh yeah, I can feel the air coming by. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to line up my 0 with my 0. Should be able to see the 0 on the 0 here. This angle. 0 is on the 0. Looking straight at it. Close enough anyways, it's a little bit off. But I do need it to be pretty exact. As exact as I can. For doing this by hand, by myself. Okay. That appears to be 0 on 0. And with some light, I would be able to see. Let me get you in here to look at this. Get some light on this subject. My handy dandy little bright light. And you should be able to see that the piston is there at the top, all the way up top. And I know it had compression. I know this just turned. I've got that at 0. So that should be top dead center on the number 1 cylinder. If I can find it again. Like I say, with the light in there, you can see the pistons at the top. So I think I've verified that's at top dead center. Now, in theory, when I take this, when I take this distributor off, right now, if I set it properly, when I put it on earlier, the distributor cap should be, or the rotor cap should be pointing at this cylinder. Should be in almost a direct line from here to this, because this is my number 1 wire, all right, which will go to the number 1 cylinder. Okay, so in theory, that rotor cap on the inside of this should be pointing in this direction, like straight over here, just like this towards this wire, in theory. But let me take it off and look, see. I'm sure anybody working on one of these understands that it's really easy to take this cap off. There are springs in these little clips. You can see down here, this clip, I just turn it out. Turn it 180 degrees, and in either direction, doesn't matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise, you're just turning that out. And it's just a clip that holds this down. Okay, so those are loose, and you got to keep in mind, this can only go on one way. There is an alignment piece on the back here. Right here. Let me get this off. Disconnect my battery and my coil wires here. Now right under here, there's a little square tab that goes into a slot on the back of this. So you know you've got it seated right when it sits properly, and this tab is in this slot. Now, like I said, this should have been pointed right straight at the number 1 cylinder or at the wire, which actually should be here. So that might be my problem. I need to set this back just a little tiny bit. So there's a 9/16 nut here that I've got this locked down with. So I have to get a 9/16 nut to loosen that up. Sure you have a 9/16 wrench sitting out here already, but it don't seem to be showing up. There it is. Got my 9/16. So I'll just get in here and loosen this up just a little bit so I can slide this little lock mechanism back. Now, what I need to do, I need to set it so that this is going to be where there's a, get this out here. Okay, where this is meshed in, there's a gear here to mesh into the cam, and then underneath there's a slot to hook to the oil pump. So I already know I need to turn this back a little bit. So I'm going to turn it back the amount I need, kind of hold it there in place, and see if I can re-slot it. Now it's going to turn when I go to slot it in, but now it's more direction I need it. But here, it's still not slotted into the oil pump. Yeah, it's not even slotted into the. See now, that's too far forward. I need to go further back with it. And you notice it kind of turns as I come down because of that little angle. Now there's also a small space here. I don't know if you can see it. There's a small space here where it hasn't quite seated in, but I can tell because this doesn't want to move that it's meshed in to the cam. So with it being meshed in, it doesn't matter. If I move the engine, the rotor should turn. As the rotor turns, it should be turning clockwise as you're looking down on it. Now what will happen is I'm going to turn it a little bit and try and get it to seat on the oil pump. There it goes, it's on the oil pump. Now I can take this back to 0 and it should be pointed in the direction I need it. In theory. Okay, I've got it back 0 on 0. It should still be there, and that's pointed right this way. That's pretty close to where I was wanting to try it. So now all I gotta do is put my cap back on, spark plug back in, try to start it. Well, here we go. I'm gonna take the cap, kind of verify. Remember, it's here, it's pointed like straight like this, right here, okay, which should be really towards the number 1 cylinder, or more importantly, the number 1 wire. You know, because that's where the connection is. There's a little place here where the wire touches this as it spins by. So, try to put this back in and get this slot lined up. There it is. Slots lined up. See, it's a little bit easier for me to put this wire in before I put it in place, so I can see what's going on. We're out there on the battery side. There's a battery and a tachometer. This one is the hot wire for the tachometer, and then of course this one is the power from the battery. And the other one, so the plug, only goes in one way. And there it is, it's sitting solid. All I gotta do is put these clips down, back where they were. This is your timing adjustment. You adjust this to get your timing right. But I don't want it to be just loose like that, so I put this back in here and tighten this down just a little bit, not too much. I still want to be able to move this, but I don't want it to be loose. You know, I want to have to push it to move it. Not too loose. Okay, now I can move it, but it won't move by itself. Okay, so I've got my power cord in there. Plug this in. Plug this in, like I say, it only goes in one way. Can't really make a mistake with that one. And I'm gonna retard. Go before top dead center just a little bit here. Start in one position If that doesn't work, I'll slowly move it forward, clock it as I go forward with it. But I gotta put the spark plug back in. And the wires on. Then I can try and crank it over, see if I've got any fire. It's all boring stuff. We'll get back to it when I got that on.